In 2005, YouTube wasn't recognizable. Back then, the platform was part of the Wild Web, a largely unexplored and unexploited method for creative individuals to express their creativity. Back in 2005, there was no or very little money to be made on YouTube, so the incentives did not line up for the rise of the huge multi-million subscriber beast that this platform has nurtured. It was as the time passed and companies realized the shifting direction of people's attention from traditional entertainment means like cable television to YouTube, as well as the sheer power of influence and marketing, that things started to change. Once money was in the platform for the taking, the incentives of this market got realigned. Those subscribers, that in previous years were basically imaginary internet points, became a potential source of revenues for the creators. And the views on their videos, up until then nothing but a counter of bragging rights, could be assigned a direct monetary value. And the standard capitalist model tells us that once the incentives align for profit, any market with low barriers of entry will engage in competition. And oh boy did they. Creators began to improve their craft dramatically, from editing to improving recording quality to the increased length of videos. The competition was certainly on. The science of the algorithm became a heatedly debated topic. The art of thumbnails rose to the level of architecture, and the worries about demonetization morphed into a prayer creators whisper every night by their bedside. YouTube evolved, and its creators did too. Channels were no longer the repositories of cool videos to show your friends. They became businesses. But then a funny thing happened. As creators began excelling at editing, thumbnailing, and patroning, their videos obviously improved. But since it happened in a similar time framework for most of the big creators on this platform, the individual gains that each of those creators could have gained by independently improving their video quality or release strategy got cut off by every competitor doing the same at the same time. This is the paradox of competition, whereby an innovating or risk-taking company in an industry will not be able to fully exploit their innovation or previously unheard of strategy, because the second competitors smell a potential profit that they may not take part in, they are strongly incentivized to copy the risk-taking company. Welcome to Rebel Economics, where today we will talk about the paradox of competition. If you like our content, please consider subscribing. We're a new channel, and every like and subscribe helps us tremendously. But now, on to the video. In this channel, we will talk about competition a lot. About the dangers of too little competition in our upcoming video about Amazon, the power of competition to break monopolies, or the effects of information in competition. The reason for this is that competition is fundamental for any capitalist system to be successful. Classical theory tells us that a market that has low barriers of entry, meaning that allows new players to emerge with relative simplicity, and many competing players will produce the best products as an outcome of the constant effort of each business to gain an advantage over the rest. This video is about what happens after. What happens when a business does in fact gain the upper hand over its competitors? Firstly, businesses in this market are incredibly incentivized to constantly look for potential improvements that they can make to their entire economic infrastructure, since marginal improvements might lead them to gain a large portion of the disrupted consumer base. These improvements can take many forms, from reworking their supply chains to reducing individual production costs, perhaps through the application of a new technology. Therefore, the risk that the innovating company incurs in by deviating from the status quo will be offset by the company's larger consumer base, and from then on, it will be profits all the way for the risk taker. But once again, comes reality to mess with the perfect economic models. Why can't economists ever be happy about creating a model that just works? Anyway, common sense and experimental proof in many industries tells us that companies simply will not take the market revolution by one of their competitors lying down. In a free capitalist society where individual advantages can flow from one company to many, it is expected that competitors will eventually catch up with the innovator. The impact of competitors actually achieving this is what is called the paradox of competition, whereby the risk taker faces all of the risk of being the first player to try out something new, but only experiences a reduced competitive advantage as the other players catch up. Consider this. Let's assume that a government individually decides to allow shops to increase their opening hours by, let's say, 2 hours. Now, when an individual shop applies the new opening hours, though it has to pay its employees for that extra time, everyone who wants to shop late will have to go to that one shop, giving them a great advantage. But if all shops practice the extended opening hours, customers can shop again at other shops with similar supply, and the potential sales volume again allocates to all similar shops. Or consider the impact of the advertising in an industry. For example, the console industry. The more Nintendo spends in advertising, the more sales will grow, which incentivizes Sony to also increase their advertising budget. And at the end, their presence on consumers' minds remains the same, since the amount of ads we see for each console remains the same. But both of them will lose more money because they're spending more on those advertisements. A recent real-life example of this is Netflix's downfall in the market of streaming. Back in 2007, when Reed Hastings, Netflix's CEO, decided to take the risk and allow customers to stream their catalog of movies online, he made the innovative move. As we know, customers flock to the streaming service and away from traditional linear television, with even theaters and other tangentially related industries being disrupted in the process. But then its competitors caught on to the streaming service and started getting it out of all of their IPs and creating their own content vaults, slapped a logo on them, and now we have 1,000 new streaming services. Netflix was able to acquire a competitive advantage and exploit it for about a decade, before the rest of the players in the market caught up to it. Now Netflix is still the largest streaming service, with 50 million users, ahead of the second biggest. But it is remarkable the impact that the paradox of competition has had on this market. In many ways, this might not be considered fair. After all, Netflix did take all the risk. Streaming could have just as easily turned out to be a horrible investment that people did not care for. And that would have meant the ruin for the company. Shouldn't then Netflix have remained undisputed? Well, this would also not be ideal. While states do have mechanisms to guarantee risk-taking pays off, like copyright and trademark laws that allow a given risk-taking company to have exclusive exploitative rights over a new technology, it is not clear to me that the paradox of competition is not a positive thing in the end. Now, I am in favor of certain forms of copyright and trademark laws, since I believe that risk-taking and innovation must be incentivized, and by protecting the intellectual property of a business and its competitive advantage, we do just that. But these protections should not last forever. Protecting risk-taking by creating abusive versions of these laws has an impact on competition in a market, and this is a reality that simply cannot be ignored. Imagine for a second that a particularly anti-competition ruler decided to grant Netflix a patent for 50 years over the following concept: an online platform where users log in and can watch movies from their home via the streaming services. Now, I am not a lawyer. I imagine that is too simplistic a description and it will never fly in a patent application, but let's use it as a working example. If that happened and Netflix got that deal, one might think that this would incentivize companies even more to develop new technologies and delivery methods of their films and series. And to a certain degree, it might. But the societal price would be tremendous. Remember that the classical model of competition assumes that barriers of entry to a market are low. But legal barriers of the sort that patents are will hinder new competitors from popping out in the market and directly wrestle market power from the streaming giant. This would inevitably lead to Netflix becoming the de facto monopolistic leader of the streaming market. We will not get into detail about the damages of monopolies in a market. You can check our monopoly video in the eye bubble at the top of the screen. Essentially, what will happen is that Netflix would have price-setting ability. Almost certainly the subscription prices will be increased, since there is no one to directly compete with it and the customers overall will lose. So yeah, the paradox of competition does chip away at the long-run profitability of innovations. That is undeniable. But the alternative really is not much better. Probably there is a satisfactory middle point between one and another. Current trademark and patent law seems to be a bit too excessive for me, especially in the US. But I really have no opinion one way or another. It is a maddeningly complex balancing act. Thank you for watching this video. This has been Rebel Economics. If you enjoyed this video, you could give it a like and maybe even subscribe. And if you're still craving some more content, you could check some of these videos.